Shalom, all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Ba'asham Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of the great millstone, and salutations to all you sincere Kiam. And this is your brother Abawan back again with another video through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Ba'asham Racha Kodash. And I want to go to the book of Obadiah, verse 1, the book of Obadiah 1, verse 3. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? And this is, of course, speaking about Esau, Edom, the so-called red man that is ruling over the earth. And I'll be honest, I'll explain the inspiration for this video. I'm watching this TV series. Yeah, I recently got back into watching movies and animes. I'm a big anime fan, or I used to be, at least before I came into the truth. I used to really love watching animes, playing video games and all that. But, now the focus is on the truth, and I only really watched animes and movies in order to see if I can find something edifying in it, right? So I've done some videos going into animes and going into movies from time to time. But ultimately, I want to speak on another one right now, which is Shogun, right? It's a Netflix series that came out a few months back. I didn't really watch it because I wasn't really hype about it. In my mind, there's an oversaturation of Japanese media nowadays, so I wasn't really that interested in it. But I just decided to just watch it, because I've been seeing all these raving reviews. Oh, it's so great! Oh, it's so good! And you know how the people of this world, this kingdom are. They're all consumers, right? So they're all sitting around waiting for the next show, the next game, the next product to consume. Okay, which is why I don't really like going into these movies and game discussions or anime discussions anymore, because these people out here, they have no, they are mindless zombies nowadays out here, man. So yeah, and back to what I was saying, right? You had in episode 3 of Shogun, not episode 3, episode 2, right? The English pirate that the Japanese captured. I've forgotten his name. I've forgotten his name, O'Brien or something like that. He was basically talking about the doctrine of discovery, right? Where during the early stages of the transatlantic slave trade, when Portugal and Spain were the main powers, that were, going around colonizing and conquering lands and taking up slaves. And if you go into the history, right, the first Europeans to actually really be involved in the slave trade come to Africa to try to get, Jake out of Africa, right, and turn them into slaves. Whether it was even in Spain, even in Portugal, even the first Europeans that went all the way to the New World to get the Northern Kingdom. So that's Gad, Reuben, the whole of the Northern Kingdom. It was the Portuguese and the Spanish under the blessings, right, or the approval of the Catholic Church. And that is where we come into the doctrine of discovery, because what he was referencing, the Englishman in Shogun episode 2, was the doctrine of discovery. And I'm about to read it right here. The Vatican repudiates doctrine of discovery, which was used to justify colonialism, March 30th, 2023. And this is how, and the reason why you have Wakitaki plantation Christianity as a global religion, because of the doctrine of discovery, right? You see, these devils, they really use the captivity of our people to consolidate their power and to turn themselves into a world power on the earth. Because if it wasn't for the captivity that they put our people under, Esau, Edom, these devils would not have the power that they do right now. But you know that it is of the causes of course, right? By a nation that's neither thou nor thy father knowest not, they shall come and take the way to a land, which is roughly paraphrasing. We already know the causes, right? So now continuing on. Nearly 500 years after papal decrees were used to rationalize Europe's colonial conquests, the Vatican repudiated those decrees on Thursday, saying the doctrine of discovery that was used to justify snuffing out indigenous peoples' cultures and livelihoods is not part of the Catholic faith. So now they decide to repudiate the doctrine of discovery. You ever notice how these devils always do this? Basically they wag the finger at the actions of their ancestors while they continue to enjoy the wealth and the prosperity provided by them by those same actions. You want to repudiate the doctrine of discovery, and you are doing it with just a public statement. Oh, well, the Catholic Church has realized after 500 years of benefiting from the doctrine of discovery that, it was actually a bad situation. So, bad ancestors, right? Bad ancestors, and that closed the matter. No reparations, no talks of how to right the injustice that has been committed, right? Just a public repudiation, right? That's really what repudiation means. To refuse to accept, to reject as untrue or unjust, to refuse to acknowledge or pay. So basically, what you're saying is that just forget about what happened in the past, because that's really what this is. Because understand something, Israel is not rejecting or denouncing or denying the evils that their ancestors committed. These devils don't do that, man. That's why you see that they still have the statues and still praise these their wicked ancestors to this day. Men like Christopher Columbus or all the presidents of the United States of America, the founding fathers, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and the like. Imagine them being held in such a high regard when they were just a bunch of demons, right? They were a bunch of demons and hypocrites. How can you come out and say, oh well, the US is based on freedom for all people, right? Freedom for all men, that all men be at liberty, and that all men are created equal. Yet the founding father, George Washington, was a renowned slave owner, had dentures made from the teeth of his slaves. But these devils, they don't think about that, because as it is in the legislation, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, you scattered Israelites that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, you are only seen as one-third of a full human being in Babylon the Great. And that still applies to this day. So don't think nothing has changed, because if nothing changed, there is no new thing under the sun. The more things look like they change, the more you realize that they are just all still the same. And that's why we are where we are right now, speaking on this doctrine of discovery and how the Catholic Church is, quote unquote, repudiating it. So let's continue reading. The doctrine was invoked as a legal and religious standard and religious standing by Europeans who discovered new lands and violently seized it from people who had been living there for generations. And now you are seeing what it means for Christopher Columbus to discover America, what it means for these Europeans to discover a land. Because understand something, any land that you see an Edomite in right now, any land that you see a so-called white person, a so-called red person in right now, they are not the true inhabitants of that land. They came into that land while it was being inhabited by other groups of people, right? And of course, exclusively dark-skinned people. Whether it's the Ohamites, whether it's actual Shemites or the Japhites. And what they did was they came in and they conquered unjustly, right? Because you also have this doctrine that is being pushed out here where these Edomites say, oh, well, our ancestors conquered the land fair and square. They did not. Edom has never conquered anything fair and square a day in his life. After all, it's not written, and that is in the book of Ecclesiasticus. Let's get that. And that is exactly how Edom took over these lands. If you do your research, right, you'll find out that that's exactly how Edom took over these lands and, quote unquote, conquered the world, right, through unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit. Let me see if I can't find that precept. Here it is, Ecclesiasticus 10 verse 8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. And that's exactly how Esau, Edom got their kingdom, unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, right? But let's continue reading anyway. Yeah. So now the next paragraph or next sentence. It has been cited in different arenas for centuries, including the U.S. Supreme Court as early as 1823 and as recently as 2005. Right. So basically, they are. Let me just read this. Let me just read this part as well. The doctrine came from papal bulls in the 15th century. The doctrine was laid out in a series of papal bulls or decrees. The first one was issued in 1452. Right, so as soon as these devils are coming out of the Renaissance, they are already thinking about how they can conquer and deceive and destroy the earth. So you see the hubris, right, the evil that is Esau Edom. They authorized colonial powers such as Spain and Portugal to seize lands and subjugate people in Africa and the New World as long as people on the lands were not Christians. Right, so I should rephrase that. It's not as long as people in the land were not Christians, right, but rather we are not Catholics, right, or Christians as Esau Edom pushes it, because you had Christians in places like Ethiopia, right, in Africa. You also had Christians you also had Christians in West Africa, because the Moors, right, if you go into the history of the Moors, you had a lot of Moors coming out of West Africa, and not all Moors were Muslim, because as you know, the term Moor is just a group word for Jake, right, for our people, the Israelites, specifically the Southern Kingdom. You also had Christian Moors as well. I believe there is Saint Maurice, Moses the Black, if I recall correctly. I can't share. Don't quote me on that, because this history, I'm a little bit rusty on the Moorish stuff. So don't quote me on that. I'm a little bit rusty on the Moorish stuff. So don't quote me on that. But you had different Christian Moors go back then. So this is actually going into the Catholic religion, right? That's the reason why you had these devils calling every inhabitant of every land that they go to savages, basically because they didn't believe in the same Christianity, right? The Wakitaki plantation Christianity that Esau Edom pushes, not to be confused as some of our people ignorantly and willfully do with this truth. Okay, the Bible is not the white man's book. Okay, but let's continue reading. Okay, that's what I wanted to get about that. And this shows you right there not just the pride but the wickedness of Esau Edom, which is why I started by reading Obadiah 1 verse 3, because that's really what this doctrine of discovery shows you. And these devils basically decided that all the land that they are able to explore now belongs to them, right? Belongs to either Portugal or to Spain. And that was what the English sailor in Shogun was talking about. Basically, during that time, you had Europe splitting up all the portions of the known world into to the various European countries. Spain had one part, Portugal had one part, and it's the same thing that they did here in Africa as well. If you look at an old map of Africa, you see how these devils split up the land according to the various European countries. Germany had this, England had this, France had this, Poland, Belgium, so on and so forth. So now you hear these devils talk about how, oh, they are Polish, oh, they are from this European country. They had nothing to do with transatlantic slave trade. They had nothing to do with colonialism or any other of the evils that Esau is involved in. Of course, they are being dishonest, right? Because damn near all the European countries were involved in the transatlantic slave trade. All the European countries benefited from it, whether it was buying the whether it was buying the sugar, right, or the tobacco, or the cotton that was produced in the Americas and even in West Africa as well, because you did have sugar plantations here in West Africa, right? This is the tactic that Esau Edom uses to try to absolve himself of his crimes by trying to hide those crimes. But the Most High, however, Shan Yahshai, is exposing you devils, which is why the scriptures say that the wicked shall be revealed, whom the Most High shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and the brightness of his coming. Right? And right now, you devils are being exposed big time, and the whole world is beginning to see that the whole world's problem is really you, Esau Edom. Because if you watch that Shogun, man, you already know what is going to happen to to the Japanese, because the Portuguese are there, the Spanish are there, and the English have now discovered the land of Japan. So you already know what is going to happen to them. And you already know historically what actually happened when the land was, basically taken over by these devils, to the point that they had to close out Japan in order to protect themselves from Esau Edom, right? Which of course, at let me calm down, I'm getting a little excited. At that time, these devils were more concerned with putting our people in captivity and gaining riches from the transatlantic slave trade, and they were with, putting hell on the Chinese and Japanese, right? Anyway, that's all I have on that. So once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Basham Yawashai, Basham Bakakwadash, Wa Abad Babal, and through the spirits of your camp, and your are edified. Shalom.